Right now, in your refrigerator, there is almost certainly food waiting to be reheated tomorrow. And in most kitchens over 65, that food gets reheated the same way it always has. No second thoughts, no concerns. Because nobody ever said there was a reason to think twice. That is exactly the problem. Pancreatic cancer is one of the most serious cancers in older adults. It is often called a silent disease because it rarely causes noticeable symptoms until it has already advanced significantly. And researchers studying why some people develop it while others do not keep finding the same pattern. Cumulative exposure. Small, repeated chemical insults to the same organ over years and decades. Not one dramatic event. A slow accumulation. I am Dr. Patricia Wells. I have spent over 18 years working in geriatric medicine, and today I want to walk you through 5 specific foods that, when reheated repeatedly or incorrectly, may significantly increase your risk. Studies and references are in the description below. I always encourage you to check them yourself. Now, here is what I need you to understand before we go further. This is not about making you afraid of your own kitchen. It is about giving you information that the food industry has very little financial interest in making public. Because the 5 foods on today's list are 5 of the most profitable products on grocery store shelves, and the research connecting reheating habits to cancer risk falls through the cracks of every 7-minute appointment. But number 1 on this list, that one surprises almost every patient I share it with. It is a food that most nutrition experts praise as one of the healthiest proteins you can eat. And I would guess you reheated it sometime this week. We will get to that. But first, have you ever reheated food and wondered if it was really fine to eat? Type yes in the comments right now if you have. Hold on to your answer, because what you are about to learn may change the way you think about that question permanently. Dorothy is 71, retired librarian, lives alone in Ohio. 3 weeks ago, I received a message from her, and it stopped me. She wrote, "Dr. Wells, my father died of pancreatic cancer at 73. For the past 2 years, I have been terrified of getting it myself. I eat carefully, I exercise, I do everything right. But I keep reading about diet, and I do not know what to believe anymore. Can you just tell me honestly, is there anything I am doing in the kitchen every day that I should know about?" I want to use Dorothy's question as the thread that runs through today's video, because she represents thousands of people watching this right now. People who are trying, people who want real answers. Not generic advice, not reassurance that everything is fine. Dorothy, this video is for you. Let me start by telling you what is happening inside your pancreas, because understanding this is what makes everything else make sense. All right? Your pancreas is essentially an overworked factory with no days off. It produces insulin to regulate your blood sugar. It produces enzymes that your body needs to digest food. And it processes virtually everything that passes through your digestive system. Every meal, every chemical compound, every byproduct of how your food was prepared. All of it reaches the pancreas in some form. That is not a flaw. That is the job. Now picture a factory that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 60 or 70 years. And every so often, a small amount of something corrosive gets mixed into the supply chain. Nothing dramatic, not a poison, just a mild irritant. Once or twice, the factory handles it without issue. Repair crews fix the small damage. Normal operations continue. But if that same mild irritant arrives every few days, for years, the repair crews fall behind. Damage accumulates faster than it can be fixed. And eventually, something goes wrong at the cellular level that should not go wrong. That is what researchers mean by cumulative exposure. And that is why reheating habits matter far more than most people realize. Here is what the food industry does not spend much time explaining. When you heat certain foods once and then reheat them a second or third time, chemical changes occur inside that food. Not every time, not in every food, but in specific foods, under specific conditions, those changes produce compounds that your body is not designed to handle well. Particularly an older body. particularly a body where the repair mechanisms are already working harder than they were at 40. That accumulation is what today is about. Now I need to be clear about something before we go further. These 5 foods are not poisons. I am not telling you to throw away everything in your refrigerator. What the evidence suggests, and I want to use that word carefully, suggests, is that habitual, repeated reheating of these specific foods may contribute meaningfully to the cellular environment in which cancer can develop over time. For someone who is already at elevated risk, family history, diabetes, prior pancreatitis, these patterns carry more weight. For everyone over 65, they are worth knowing. Full stop. So, 5 foods. Count down from 5 to 1. And remember, number 1 is the one almost nobody expects. Number 5. Reheated spinach and other leafy greens. This surprises people, because spinach is genuinely good for you. Beets, celery, kale, these are vegetables we rightly celebrate for their health benefits. And fresh, they deserve every bit of that celebration. Here is what nobody mentions. Spinach and several other leafy greens are naturally high in dietary nitrates. Fresh from the pan, these nitrates are not a concern. In fact, they are associated with better blood pressure and cardiovascular function. But when these vegetables are cooked, cooled, and then reheated, especially at high heat or in a microwave, something shifts. Those nitrates convert to nitrites. And when nitrites come into contact with certain proteins and amino acids during digestion, they can form compounds called Nitrosamines, the same class of compounds I will come back to with item number 2. Research from European nutrition institutes has flagged habitual reheating of high nitrate vegetables as a pattern worth examining in the context of gastrointestinal cancer risk. The connection is still being studied, but the direction of the evidence is consistent enough that it warrants attention. The practical change here is genuinely simple. Cook your greens fresh when you can. If you have leftover cooked spinach or kale, eat them cold the next day in a salad. You get the full nutritional benefit. You skip the chemical conversion. Cold, wilted spinach with olive oil and a squeeze of lemon is something my patients discover they actually enjoy once they try it. But if spinach surprises you, number 4 will surprise you more. Because this one is in almost every single kitchen. Number 4. Reheated rice. Rice seems so harmless, and it is, when handled correctly. But uncooked rice frequently carries spores of a bacteria called Bacillus cereus. Cooking kills the active bacteria. It does not kill the spores. And if cooked rice sits at room temperature for even 2 hours, those spores become active bacteria that produce toxins. Toxins that survive subsequent reheating. Now, here's the connection that concerns me as someone who sees older patients. Those bacterial toxins, when repeatedly introduced to the digestive system through poorly stored rice, trigger low-grade inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract. Think of it as a slow-burning fire that never quite goes out. Early research suggests that this kind of repeated inflammatory insult to tissues near the pancreas may contribute to a cellular environment that is less resistant to cancer development over time. This connection is still preliminary, but what is not preliminary is the direct food safety risk. Reheated, improperly stored rice is a genuine source of illness, particularly for older adults whose immune systems do not mount responses as robustly as they once did. The fix? Refrigerate rice within 1 hour of cooking. Consume it within 24 hours. Reheat it only once, to steaming hot throughout, not warm on the outside and cool in the middle. And if it has been sitting out, discard it. Rice is 20 cents. It is not worth the risk. But number 3. This one is a comfort food staple for so many people over 65, and the chemistry of what happens when you reheat it is something I want you to understand clearly. Back to Dorothy for a moment. In her message, she mentioned she eats carefully. She described what that looks like. Grilled chicken, plenty of vegetables, lots of whole grains. She reheats her meals throughout the week to save time. I batch cook on Sundays, she wrote, and I thought that was the healthy, sensible thing to do. She was right to think that. Batch cooking is a genuinely good strategy. The question is, which foods are well suited for it? and which ones change in ways you should know about? And the answer to that question is what made her message so important to me. Number 3. Reheated potatoes. Potatoes are genuinely nutritious, resistant starch, potassium, vitamin C. Nothing wrong with loving them. But starchy foods cooked at high temperatures, then cooled, then reheated again at high heat, develop something called acrylamide. It is a chemical compound that forms naturally through a reaction between certain sugars and amino acids when starchy foods are exposed to heat above 120 degrees Celsius. 120 degrees Celsius. That is well below boiling. Your oven, your microwave, your frying pan all exceed this temperature easily. Now, here's what matters for this conversation. Acrylamide has been classified as a probable human carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. That is the same classification as the European research body, not possible, probable. And several population studies have found associations between higher acrylamide intake and increased risk of various cancers, with some research specifically identifying a pattern involving pancreatic cancer in older adults. The research is not settled, but the classification is not casual either. The level of acrylamide in reheated potatoes, particularly roasted, fried, or microwaved, is significantly higher than in freshly cooked potatoes. The first cooking already produces some. The second cooking produces more. The cycle compounds. The practical shift. Eat your roasted or fried potatoes fresh from the pan. If you have leftover boiled potatoes, eat them cold the next day. Cold, boiled potatoes with olive oil and fresh herbs are genuinely pleasant, and a cold potato has a lower glycemic response than a hot one, which matters for anyone managing blood sugar. 2 benefits in 1 change. But there is a group of people for whom number 3 carries extra weight, and I will name them directly. If you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, you are already at higher risk for pancreatic cancer than the general population. The starch changes in repeatedly reheated potatoes can drive blood sugar spikes that place additional metabolic stress on a pancreas that is already working harder than it should. This is not abstract. This is a real compounding factor. Please take the swap seriously. Now, number 2 on this list involves the most well-documented connection in all of today's research. And if you tap like right now and save this video, you will be able to come back to this part. Because the next 2 minutes contain information I genuinely wish every person over 65 already had. Number 2. Reheated processed and smoked meats. Bacon, sausage, deli meats, ham. These foods are already classified by the World Health Organization as Group 1 carcinogens. Group 1. That is the strongest classification used. It means there is strong scientific evidence that they increase cancer risk, even when eaten fresh, even before reheating enters the picture. But here is what most people do not know. When processed meats are reheated, particularly at high temperatures, the nitrites and nitrates already present in them undergo a chemical reaction. Think of it as a handshake between molecules that should not be introduced to each other. That reaction produces compounds called nitrosamines, and nitrosamines are among the most consistently studied compounds in relation to pancreatic cancer risk specifically. Multiple peer-reviewed analyses, including a significant review published in the International Journal of Cancer, have found meaningful associations between high processed meat consumption and elevated pancreatic cancer risk. The association strengthens with age, and it strengthens with reheating. Here is why that last part matters. Older adults process nitrosamines less efficiently. The liver enzymes responsible for neutralizing these compounds become less active with age. So the same piece of reheated sausage that a 35-year-old body handles without difficulty presents a meaningfully higher burden for someone at 65 or 70. Same food, different body. Very different outcome at the cellular level. The food industry has known about this chemistry for decades. There is no financial incentive to put it on the label, so nobody tells you. And most doctors do not have time to bring it up in a routine appointment. That is not your doctor's fault. That is the system failing you. My practical recommendation? Limit processed meats overall. If you do have them, eat them once, fresh. Do not reheat. When you want a warm protein in the morning, a fresh egg or gently warmed canned fish is a genuinely safer choice. If the bacon and sausage habit is deeply ingrained, this is the one change on today's list worth the most effort. It has the strongest evidence base. But number 1, I promised you this would be unexpected, and I keep my promises. Back to Dorothy one more time. After I received her message, I replied with a question. I asked her to describe exactly how she batch cooks on Sundays, what she cooks, how she stores it, how she reheats it through the week. She wrote back 2 days later. Her list included several things: brown rice, roasted sweet potatoes, a large batch of cooked greens, and she always makes a whole roasted chicken. She reheats portions of that chicken every day through the week, Monday through Friday, 5 days, skin on, high heat in the microwave because it is faster. And she told me, chicken is the one thing I have never questioned. Everyone says it is a lean, healthy protein. She is right. It is. Fresh. The problem is what happens to it when it is reheated. Again and again and again. Number 1. Reheated chicken and other poultry. Here's the chemistry. Chicken contains fats, especially in and around the skin. When those fats are heated initially, some oxidation begins. When they are cooled and then reheated, the oxidation compounds, and oxidized fats produce a category of molecules called aldehydes, including one called malondialdehyde. That name is a mouthful. What it means in plain terms is this: oxidized fat breakdown products introduce a consistent source of oxidative stress to your cells. And oxidative stress, at the cellular level, is one of the foundational mechanisms through which DNA damage accumulates. Your pancreatic cells contain DNA that must replicate without error to function properly. Repeated exposure to aldehyde compounds from reheated poultry does not cause cancer in a single meal. But studies in both laboratory settings and large population cohorts have found associations between habitual oxidized fat consumption and elevated cancer risk. The pattern involving repeated reheating, specifically of poultry with skin, appears in multiple research reviews examining pancreatic cancer risk factors. This is not just about lipid oxidation. Reheated chicken that has not been stored correctly is also one of the most common sources of infection from bacteria such as Salmonella and Campylobacter. Repeated gastrointestinal infections drive inflammation, and inflammation at the organ level is a documented risk environment for cancer development. The two mechanisms compound each other. This is not a call to stop eating chicken. It is a call to rethink how you handle it across the week. My recommendation: reheat chicken a maximum of 1 time. Low and slow heat in an oven at around 165 degrees Celsius, thoroughly hot throughout, rather than a microwave on high. Remove the skin before reheating. The skin is where oxidized fat is most concentrated. If you batch cook chicken on Sundays, consider eating it cold in salads through the week, rather than reheating it daily. Cold roasted chicken with vegetables is a complete, nutritious meal, and the chemistry is entirely different. I want to read you the rest of Dorothy's message now, because this is the part that matters most. She ended her message with this: I do not expect a miracle. I know I cannot guarantee anything. I just want to know that I did what I could for myself, and so I do not put my children through what I went through with my father. That sentence stayed with me, so I want to be direct with her and with you. You cannot prevent every cancer. No change in diet guarantees protection. Pancreatic cancer is complex. Genetics, environment, chance all play roles that no food choice can override. And none of what I've shared today should replace a conversation with your own doctor about your personal risk factors, especially if you have had pancreatitis, if you have diabetes, or if you have a family history of pancreatic cancer. Bring this list to your next appointment. Ask whether any of your current habits are worth discussing. What you can do is reduce your cumulative exposure over time. You can make different choices about which foods you batch cook and which you prepare fresh. You can change how you store and reheat what remains. You can remove the skin before reheating poultry. You can eat your greens cold instead of reheated. You can stop cycling processed meats through the microwave. None of these changes cost money. None of them require a prescription. All of them reduce the slow accumulation of chemical compounds that your pancreas has to process every single day. That is real, actionable prevention, and it is yours right now. I received another message from Dorothy last week. She told me she had forwarded this information to her primary care doctor before our exchange. She said, "I showed my doctor your notes. She said she does not have time to cover this in appointments, but she was glad I knew. She said to keep doing what I am doing." That is the version of healthcare I want for every person watching this. Not passive, informed, engaged, armed with the right questions. Today you have learned something real. You now understand why reheating specific foods creates chemical compounds that a body over 65 processes less efficiently than a younger one. You know which 5 foods carry the most meaningful evidence. You have specific, practical swaps for each one. No dramatic overhaul. Small, deliberate changes that compound in your favor over time. You came here with a question. You are leaving with answers. Type 1 finished in the comments if you watched all the way through. And then, send this to one person you care about. Your mother, your sister, someone who batch cooks every Sunday and never questioned it. Not because you want to alarm them, because you want them to have what you now have, the information. References are in the description. Check them. That is what informed people do. And before you go, next week I am looking at something that surprised me when I first read the research. There is one common morning habit that over half of adults over 65 do within 20 minutes of waking. Something considered completely normal, even healthy by some standards. And a recent analysis involving several thousand adults found it was quietly disrupting one of the body's most important cancer defense mechanisms during the hours when that protection matters most. You will not expect which habit it is. That is next week. Make sure you are subscribed.